Before the video starts, just a quick reminder to go check out the Chilling app. If you can't get enough content from me here on this channel, myself and other narrators here on YouTube are going to be providing hours of unique and spine-tingling scary story narrations exclusively over on the Chilling app. There's new narrations from me added weekly, and there's new professional narrators constantly being added to the list. So far, there's over 400 stories to binge, from monsters, paranormal, thrillers, and true scary stories. The Chilling app even recently added classic novels, vintage horror radio, and true crime stories. And this all can be enjoyed with their one-of-a-kind ambient menu, where you can mix in immersive and relaxing sound effects like rainstorms and crackling fireplaces, and adjust their volumes independently, and a sleep timer so you can drift off to dreamland without interruptions. Click the link in the description or the pinned comment to try the free trial of the Chilling app, and after that, it's only $2.99 a month, which makes it completely ad and interruption free. Also, be sure to enter this month's Chilling giveaway of a PS5 bundle. To enter, all you gotta do is download the app, start their free trial, or be a current subscriber, and fill out the entry form on the website. Best of luck to everyone. It ends on Halloween. This happened a few months ago to my friends and I. We are university students in Cape Town, South Africa, so when we aren't trying to just get through the semester, we like to let our habits get the better of us and go out for drinks. On this night, we had just finished what felt like an extra long day at university and decided to head to a bar about 5 minutes from campus for some much-needed stress relief. The evening was going well, although a bit slow. It was enjoyable with everyone having a drink and getting a bit restless. So me being one of the more outgoing ones in the group, I suggested we head to the pool bar not far from where we were. Everyone agrees and we get our stuff to go. We all jump in my car and we get to the bar, but being a Thursday night, parking was a bit scarce. I finally managed to find a spot about a block away from the bar, but in a secluded side street. I should also mention that this bar is in one of the sketchier parts of town, but is normally quite safe due to the amount of nightlife associated with being so close to a university. We walked to the bar and no one really felt uneasy, nor did anything happen to make us feel that way, which was quite surprising. After a few hours of some pool and just relaxing, we decided it was time to go grab some dinner before restaurants close, as being in South Africa means that most restaurants, even fast food, close really early at around 7 or 8 p.m. to comply with the curfew. We decided to stop at the pizza place below the bar to grab some food before we all decided what the plan was for the end of the night. So because our group was so large and the pizza place being so small, we decided to have those getting food go inside while the others who didn't would just wait outside on the street. This was an easy decision as the pizza place had a massive open window with built-on counter, so we could still all talk to each other. This is where things started getting a little weird. While we were waiting for our friends inside the pizza place to come out, this massive white van pulls up past us and stops. The driver wasn't an intimidating-looking dude. He was skinny, looked to be about average height with shoulder-length blonde hair. A pretty standard-looking dude for the kind of area we were in. He calls me and asks me if I think his van could fit in a parking spot just behind him. For perspective, this parking spot could probably fit like a small hatchback, maybe. This dude is driving a full long-sized panel van. This makes me kind of uneasy as I thought that as a driver of a car, you should know where your car can definitely not fit, and this is one of them. I explained to him that I didn't think it was even worth attempting. He responds by telling me that he has faith in his ability and I should come stand behind the van and direct him in. This gives me major red flags, and after a few back and forths, he just pulls the emergency brake up and sits and stares at my friends and I for what felt like an eternity. He then thanked us and drove off. This sparks my friends to come outside from the pizza place as they just saw what happened and were very confused. We all were kind of weirded out, but think nothing of it, and everyone gets their pizza, and we try to decide what the plan is for the last hour or two we have before curfew cuts things short. Most of us decide this is where our night is probably going to end, as we're all kind of weirded out by the guy in the van. A few others decide that they were going to stay and just Uber home a little later in the evening. With our group number cut down to 4, we decided to walk back to the car and just head home. When we left the pizza place, a homeless person called at us and was insisting we had nothing to worry about with the guy in the van, which didn't help with anyone's nerves. We then decided to head to the car, but as soon as we turned the corner to approach the side street where the car was parked, we see Van Man again. This time, not so happy as he seemed in his encounter earlier. I made a cheeky comment about him finally finding a parking spot so he could fit in while we were walking past each other, and he just stared at my friends and I, not breaking eye contact even when we passed him. I turned around to see if he was still looking. He was, but as we turned the corner of the side street with the car, I saw it and my heart sank. The van, horribly parked half on and half off the sidewalk, back door slightly open. Upon seeing this, I turn around and see Van Man is now walking towards us, but he said something that confused me at first, but immediately made sense after. He said, "Hey, please just watch my car." Which confused me, but when he said that, 4 men sat up from leaning on the wall next to it and began following us. My friends and I were slightly ahead of them, so we were trying to discuss the game plan because it was obvious if we did nothing, something horrible was going to happen. My friends start walking faster and I remain at the same speed, frantically searching my pockets for my car keys, all the while shouting at my friends to wait up and asking what the rush was. All this was in hopes that the guys behind us, who were gaining on us at that point, were oblivious to us knowing that they had sinister intentions. As soon as the car came into view, we booked it, jumped in and drove away. But we were only mere seconds from not being that lucky. After locking the car doors, I saw the men surrounding the car. I managed to get us out, and looking back in the mirror, I saw a 5th man by the van at the bottom of the street. I still have no idea what their intentions were that night, if it were to rob us, or just beat us up, or worse. I don't really like to think about it, and really do consider how lucky we were that night. I ask that when you're out, no matter how innocent an interaction with someone can seem, always pay attention to the little things. I was hiking in the Olympic National Forest a few years ago, myself and my 2 dogs. We were 4 days in, and around 20 miles at least as a crow flies from even a known mountain road. I was camping at around 7K feet that night, or right where the tree line started thinning out. So, when we got to the campsite, a big open meadow on top of a secondary mountain, it was about an hour from sunset. My big dog usually runs around within proximity of the camp as I put the tent up and make dinner. But I noticed this time it was a little different. He kept staring up at this steep tree-filled mountainside, tail straight up and barking. Not the bark when he sees marmots, not the excited, "Oh, you MFers are lucky because I'd rip you all apart if my master wasn't here," high-pitched barks, but unsure, concerned barks. Now, the day before I had found a note left under a rock at the last landmark saying that there was a problem bear in the area that was harassing a party of campers a few days ago. And I myself had seen big cat tracks the day before, so I was rightfully concerned that this may be more than just ground squirrels. I decided to go climb some of the boulders at the foot of the hill while I took my time looking up the hillside for movement before I went to go hang my bear bag up there. They were really the only trees around to hang the bag. I didn't see or hear anything, but my dog kept quietly whining like there was something up there. So while still concerned, I started hiking up this really steep hill to hang the bag. It was so steep I had to use the trees to balance and lean against so I didn't go tumbling down, before making another 5 to 6 step push to the next tree that I could lean against. Anyways, I'm slowly making it up this hill and ridge, hopping from tree to tree to keep my balance. Then I get about 100 feet up the hill and I hear a whole lot of big movement about 50 feet in front of me. My dog immediately goes from a deep low growl to a savage, slobbering, flying everywhere type barking now. My heart starts pounding out of my chest, and I start to panic. A million thoughts go racing through my head in the matter of seconds, because if this is a bear, my dog is going to try to save me, in which he will most likely die. And I'm stuck here. If I had to get off that hillside fast, I almost 100% am going to trip and fall off the 12 to 15 feet cliff onto the boulders below, like hundreds of 5 to 20 foot boulders. So I'm feeling pretty screwed about now. Then I hear my other little dog start barking and freaking out down at my campsite, which was just out of sight. I had zipped her up in the tent so she didn't wander off while I was away. So yeah, I'm absolutely panicking at this point. A few seconds after, I kind of snap back to it, and I take another few seconds to start to put my survival priorities in order and call my dog back to me, named Loki, by the way. He comes and sits against my feet as my back is against a tree, so I'm kind of pinned and stuck there for a moment. But my dog was seemingly trying to separate me from something up there, so I let him lean against me while I try to collect myself. This is when I realized I had completely forgot that I had my headlamp on. I reach up so fast up to turn my lamp on, I basically punch myself in the face. I'm having some serious adrenaline dumps going right now, so much so that my knees are starting to shake. I get my lamp on and peer up the hillside. I figured I'll at least just get a reflection of the eyes of whatever is up there. Peering, and nothing. But I had just heard something. We both did. And whatever it was didn't get away or sound like it had made it too far. I knew something was up there, so I'm kind of just steadfast at this point. I need to know what is up there because I have to sleep here tonight. And I'm out here in the middle of nowhere alone. Better to face it than wait like a sitting duck all night is my thought process. So yeah, as I'm looking up this hill and at one point my dog lunges forward, unpinning me. He does a fake bluff charge up the hill about 15 feet. I mean, he's snarling and foaming at the mouth at this point. As he does this, I finally see movement. Something moving up and breaking the line of the horizon and sunset. My dog's bluff made whatever it was blow its cover, so I'm zeroed in. I call my dog back and silently watch, and what I make out made my heart completely drop. There was a man, crouched about 75 feet directly in front of me, wearing not camo clothes, but some raggedy stuff with a hood that blended into the environment perfectly. Actually, almost like a makeshift ghillie suit, but with his face exposed. I couldn't see his eyes and his face was covered in dirt or something, but I knew we were staring right at each other at that moment. So, I stare. For what seems like minutes. No words. I felt like I was trying to subconsciously convey that I was going to stand my ground. I wanted him to know I saw him, but I guess I was just too shaken to speak. As I'm staring, my little dog back at the campsite started to bark her head off again like she was scared. But I also had to get off that hill before total dark or I could be seriously hurt / risk dying trying to get back down. So carefully I start heading down the hill with my dog who doesn't want to leave but listens. Periodically I would stop with my back against a tree holding me up and look in that direction again just to make it even more clear I saw him and eventually make it down to the boulders at the bottom. By the time I finally jumped down and hit the boulders, my little dog had stopped barking. I could only see the top of my tent from the bottom of the boulders. I thought she was barking just to bark. Dachshunds do that, or just barking back at my dog. But when I get there, my little dog had somehow gotten out of the tent and was walking around the camp growling with her tail sticking straight out. Still trying to hold it together, I thought, okay, maybe she's just got her nose between the zippers and worked her way out, but I was positive I had zipped it so the zipper and tap and openings was at the very top of the tent, out of reach. So in a mixture of being terrified, angry, and the feeling of needing to do something, I reached into my day bag and pulled out my .40. I fire a single shot into the air as the sun was setting, climb into my tent without eating, and lay with my gun next to me until first light. As soon as the sun came up, I was packing up my stuff and leaving, heading back down the mountain. It sucks. It was all downhill back, but still couldn't cover the ground to get back to my car in one day. It was dark by the time I made it to the last camp, about 4 miles from my vehicle. but thankfully there weren't other people there. We sat around a fire they made, and I felt pretty relieved and safe. They start to tell me that they're planning to head that way where I was the night before in the morning, so I tell them my story in detail. Needless to say, we were both walking back to our cars in the morning. Screw all that. The thing that still creeps me out to this day, though, is when I got home and started reading reviews of the same hike I was on, other people had had similar experiences like mine as well. Even a man found dead from a fall around the same boulder range 2 years ago, and a woman found murdered last year. So I was a security guard for this local company in my area. I was assigned to a water park with another guard who was a regular there keeping watch. He was to train me and show me around and tell me what codes open what doors. I first noticed how quick he was to enter and leave the property. He never wanted to spend more than maybe 10 minutes inside the property before he would be eager to leave. Our first night was simple. There was nothing exciting or interesting going on, so our night dragged on. After a few hours, I asked him if he'd experienced anything unusual while working there. He told me he's had some problems with people trying to enter the property without permission, but that's about it. He also told me he hated working there because of his encounters with these people. He said they creeped him out because of how sneaky they were. He didn't really want to tell me much because he was afraid that I would leave the post. That should have been a red flag for me, but I was too excited to let anything like that scare me. A few more hours later and our shift is over, so we clock out and go home for the day. The next night, my boss calls me to explain that the security guard, my partner, had resigned. I was a little upset because now I was to work a 2-man post all by myself with barely any knowledge on the place. Fast forward a few weeks, I started to get the hang of the place and created my own routine with no issues at all. No break-ins, no vandalism, nothing. It's now 2 a.m. and I was outside at the front of the property completing my rounds when I heard a door slam from inside. I jumped because of how loud it was. As I started to walk back into the property, I continued to hear doors opening and closing. I could feel myself getting nervous because it was my first situation I've ever had at this place. As I walk inside and started to check the doors and complete a round to make sure that there was no one on the property, I get to this corridor where there was a set of stairs that led down to a door that was wide open. I walked down the stairs to close and lock the door because I was too scared to take a look inside. As I turned around to head back up the stairs, I noticed a man dressed in all black standing at the top of the stairs. I take a step back and realized I'm cornered if he was to try anything, and that I would have nowhere to run or hide. So I politely ask him if he needed any help. He doesn't reply. I then asked him how he got into the property. He still didn't reply. He slowly turned his head and snapped his fingers. Then from the left side of the staircase, another man slowly crawled to his side like a dog on all fours. I then turned around and kicked the door open and ran inside and locked myself in the bathroom as I called my boss and told them what I witnessed, and they sent an armed security guard to my position to complete a walkthrough to make sure that I was safe. As I got the call that that area was clear, I came out and told them everything from start to finish. I realized that they probably wouldn't believe me, so I just clocked out and went home for the night. The next morning, I received a call from my boss explaining that they checked the security footage from the night before, and what they told me horrified me. Every hour when I would complete my rounds inside the property, those same 2 men would follow me through the facility as if though they were stalking me, like as if though it was a game to them. After that, I asked for a new position because I was too horrified to work at that water park. I now know why my trainer didn't want to work there anymore. I'm super creeped out right now. I, a 27-year-old female, was home completely alone and sleeping in my bed in the middle of the night last night. I was woken up by the sound of someone trying to push up on my locked bedroom window. I couldn't see the window because it was past my footboard on the other side of the bedroom and I was lying down. But I knew that unmistakable sound of the window being locked and the jiggling sound it makes because I've locked myself out plenty of times and had tried to get through that window before. I sat up to get a look and saw a dark silhouette of a person looking in the window. I laid back down for a second, really confused and tired, and when it actually clicked what I had seen, I sat right back up. They were gone. I tried to get back to sleep, but was spooked for the rest of the night. In the morning, I thought I may have dreamed it after I called everyone I knew that it could possibly have been, and nobody knew anything. Nobody was at my house. Nobody I knew would just try to get into my bedroom window in the middle of the night anyways, especially when I don't think this person even knocked on the front before trying to open the window. I went out to investigate to see if I was just crazy. I looked at the window and there I saw the handprints of whoever was trying to slide up on the glass. Also, it had rained so I could see muddy shoe prints going to and from the window. I have no idea who they were or what they wanted, but I'm so glad my window was locked. Growing up, my parents were the stereotypical overprotective immigrant parents. But after that encounter, I understand why. I'm the youngest of three, and I have an autistic older brother and one who was also unfortunately born with mental disabilities. We are fairly close to the same age, so we did pretty much everything together when we were children. It was easier for my parents. I always took care of my brothers in general, but I always kept an extra cautious eye on my autistic relative. My mom is the strong but always nervous type, always trying to think ahead, trying to do the right thing, trying to protect her own. An incredible mama bear who never tires. She taught me to never trust strangers. Don't get in someone's car you don't know. Never follow someone you've never met before who tells you that mom and or dad has sent them to pick you up. She would always have a meeting with our school to allow me to travel by bus with my brother because we live close to school and the government rarely let me take the yellow bus, but my brother was allowed this state-funded privilege. In the end, even if I didn't have permission, the bus drivers were so nice, they'd let me tag along with them anyway. So with that said, in primary school, we would always take the yellow school bus to go to and back from school. One day, as usual, the bus dropped us at the end of a street and we had to walk to our apartment. Usually my mom would open the door for us. Even my oldest brother was home. She never lets us answer the door when we were kids for obvious reasons. That day, however, my parents weren't home. We were ringing, but we never had any answer. A car eventually pulled over in front of the building. Luckily, we had a relatively long walkway that separated the sidewalk from the stairs so they couldn't get to us easily. Suddenly, a woman came from about halfway from the passenger seat and waved at us, probably to signal us to approach. While she was gesturing, the rear door opened, and that's when I realized she wasn't alone. I couldn't correctly identify who that person was since her overall shape wasn't familiar and the car was a little far from where we were standing. So I went down a few steps to slightly approach her and them, but I just couldn't recognize her face. I really felt uneasy, so I took my brother's hand and we started running. Pure instinct, and the voice of my mom in the back of my head, imagining her reprimanding me if I took the risk to approach these strangers. It was winter and we stumbled on ice, but we were quick to get up and keep on running. I'm actually not even sure if my brother understood the whole situation. He's still a smart cookie even with all those difficulties, so I always wondered. Mind you, we were barely even 11 and 12 years old at the time. Yes, the car chased after us, but thankfully they weren't able to catch up. We arrived fairly quickly to the neighbor's house. The car sped off when the neighbor opened the door, which made the situation even more, accurate with what I thought it was. It clearly was a kidnapping attempt. When my mom was made aware of the situation, she almost had a heart attack, feeling like she could have lost us. She spent days afterward calling everyone she knew to ask if the strangers were in fact just family or friends. No one came that day, and even so, they'd always call to be sure we were home before passing by. Actually, Everyone was completely dumbfounded. But the story doesn't end there. A few weeks before this incident, we were getting a bunch of random phone calls with no one at the other end. It would ring about 2 or 3 in the morning, 6 in the morning or in the middle of the afternoon, and it happened so frequently, but being a child, I never felt any red flags from these phone calls. At most, I found them annoying. A few months ago, I put all the pieces together. My mother was especially protective and always on alert mode, probably because she knew that someone was trying to see if we were home alone when they called. I think those people were watching us for a while before trying to take action. I don't think we just happened to be alone when they were passing by. I don't think the phone calls and the right timing is a coincidence. Shortly after, the phone calls stopped. We moved out of the apartment a few months later, and we never had anything like this happen to us since. Growing up, I always wondered what would have happened if the bus drivers weren't nice enough to let me ride with my brother. Would he have gotten in their car? I'm actually grateful I was with him that day. Can't imagine what would have happened if he was alone and targeted by those monsters. I'm a big fan of tea and cookies, and the convenience store near my house is a 4 to 5 minute walk. They also sell them. On the way back home from other stuff we were doing, I asked my mom to stop there so I can buy some. I'm a regular at this store, and by that I mean I go there almost every day since 2017, and I had never seen this man before. I just walk past him as he stops me and points to the entrance to the store, asking if that's the entrance. I tell him yes and keep walking towards it. But he keeps walking beside me and says something in another language. I thought it was Romanian since I kind of recognized some words in that language. I'm a native speaker, but he told me he was Bulgarian. At this point, I'm already a bit creeped out by him because I'm generally scared of everyone, but in that moment, I just thought he needed help translating, as we currently live in Italy, so I was trying to calm myself down. As soon as we enter the store, he grabs my arm and pulls me closer to him. And I'm just screaming inside of my head, but I keep calm. I power walk inside and try to get rid of him, and when he asks me a question about bread, I just kind of try to understand what he said since I'm still thinking that he needs help, but at the same time I'm scared and I just want to go back home. I try to lose him again through the aisles of the store, but he keeps following me, and I was scared of asking people to help me because, like I said, I'm generally scared of everyone. He then grabs me again and starts touching my face, saying, "Beautiful, very beautiful, young," in Italian, and then tries to take my mask off. But I just start running for my life at that point. I get my cookies and immediately go home. I told my mom about it, and she said I should have told her earlier so we could have confronted him, but honestly, I just wanted to be home. Tomorrow I'm bringing something to make me feel more secure, and I'll go back to tell whoever works there to keep an eye out for this guy since I don't want this to happen to anyone else. You may think some of the things I did were dumb, and I completely agree with you, but I was really scared, and I barely make eye contact with strangers, so this was a completely new experience for me. Now, as an update, I went back to the store again and told a cashier what happened to me, described the guy, and she was very understanding. Apparently this isn't the first incident. Either there are 2 creeps that operate near the store, or this guy has harassed someone else in the past. This didn't happen to me, but to my roommate earlier today. For context, she just recently started working in a clothing store, and it's within walking distance from our place. We don't live in a terrible area, but she's very small and adorable, so I worry about her, especially after reading so many of the terrifying encounters in this subreddit. Her name is Sarah. At around 5 p.m. today, I got a call from Sarah, and she sounded like she was panicking. She just kept saying over and over again, "Please pick me up." I calmed her down and asked her what had happened. Apparently, while she was working, 2 men walked in that immediately gave her the creeps. They were significantly larger than herself and wore all black clothes with their hoodies pulled up, literally textbook bad guy clothes. As Sarah was stocking items in the men's section, these 2 men approached that same section and start meandering the aisles. but their eyes keep darting around the store as if they were nervous or they were looking for someone. One of them looked directly at Sarah before nudging his buddy and saying something in his ear. Started to get officially weirded out, she began to walk toward another department to continue her work. As she walked past the men, she heard one of them quietly say to the other, "Did you do it yet?" Unsure of what it was, she did her best to put a good amount of distance between her and them and continued restocking. After a few minutes, she looked up to where they had been in the men's section and they were no longer there. She looked around and it looked as if though they'd actually left the store, so she felt a bit relieved. And that relief was short-lived. After about 5 minutes, she began to get a strong feeling that someone was staring directly at her. She quickly turned around to find that one of the men was standing directly across the aisle from her, holding his phone up in a way that made it very obvious that he was taking photos of her. As soon as they made eye contact, he turned around and sped walk out of the store as though he knew he'd been caught. Sarah immediately filed a report of the entire encounter to the store's security guard, and he did a sweep of the store to see if the other man was still there. He had taken off too, and neither of them could be seen in the parking lot, so the security guard just took note of their appearances, and that was it. Having read about how human traffickers will sometimes take photos of their victims before attempting to abduct them, I'm horrified. I wish that I could have been with her all day at work to make sure that those idiots don't come back, but the best I can do for her now is drive Sarah to and from work every day. There's no way in God's name I'm letting her leave that store alone and risk getting picked up off the street. When I was a kid, I had a creepy encounter with a grown man. His half of this was much longer than mine. I think this is important to the story, as I was a preteen when this happened, but I hit puberty early enough that I looked like a younger teenager. Now the story goes, we used to have a tiny barn on my property and it was my job to milk our dairy goats every morning. So, every single morning at almost the exact same time, I'd be in the back corner of our lot to milk. It was a fairly isolated area of our yard and between 3 neighbors' fields and pastures, which was intentional since goats can be talkative, so it was right beside our neighbor's chain-link fence and grapevines. I'd sing fairly loud every morning since there was generally nobody to be bothered and it calmed the goats down. So I suppose it was easy to know that there was a girl back there every morning and night. This particular morning my mom had a bad feeling and made my brother go with me. He was bored, so he messed around and collected eggs while I milked. There was little windows around, including a wide one right behind me, and the doors were wide open, so I'd figured he'd come back eventually. Well, I saw him walk past the doors and start talking to somebody. I figured it was the neighbors, so I didn't worry when he said, "Okay, I'll get Mom," and he took off. Then I heard the chain-link fence behind me rattle, and I turned around just in time to see a man launch himself over the chain-link fence into the neighbor's yard. He'd been watching me and waiting since before I got into the yard. I don't know what he would have done if my mom hadn't made my brother go with me that morning. The only good news was, I did get out of goat milking duty.
I recently moved into a big house, just temporarily. It's kind of a complicated situation. The house belongs to a family member. They were going to be gone for a few months, that sort of thing. I was going to be there on my own, so obviously I thought, what if this house is haunted? There wasn't anything in the house when I moved in, but there is now. I was in the main hallway unpacking some stuff when the doorbell rang. That put me on edge right away, because the house is at the end of a long driveway, and kind of out of the way. You have to go looking for it. There was an old woman at the door. This was in broad daylight, but there was still something kind of off about her. She was really tall, like a full head taller than me, and there was something weird about the way she looked. It was like none of her clothes fit her properly. She shook my hand and smiled, really wide, and told me that she was from the neighborhood council, or something like that. and asked if she could come in and talk to me. My gut reaction was to say no, but I couldn't really think of a reason to. She was just an old woman. What was she going to do? I really wish I had just slammed the door in her face. I brought her into the living room, and she sort of tottered behind me, like her feet didn't fit into her shoes properly. She sat down without asking, and grinned at me until I took a seat across from her. For about half a minute, she didn't say anything. She just smiled and stared at me while it got increasingly awkward. Just as I was about to break the silence, she fished in her pocket and pulled out this really big old-fashioned sweet, the type that comes in see-through wrapping. "Here," she said, "eat this." I should probably point out here that she spoke really quietly, so it was difficult to hear anything she said. I accepted the sweet, kind of taken back, and unwrapped it. It was dark red, almost black. I popped it into my mouth because she was still grinning at me and nodding her head. Have you ever walked around behind a supermarket where they keep the big bins? They throw meat that's gone bad into those bins. Imagine that rancid smell, but on a hot summer day. It's so thick you can almost feel it in the air. That's what this sweet tasted like. I almost spit it out onto the floor, but social niceties made me chew the thing and force it down my throat. The woman was talking, but between the taste and her quiet voice, I barely heard her. My mouth tasted like rotten meat, so I politely told her I was going to go get some water and walked quickly into the kitchen. When I came back, she was gone. I had been in the kitchen for less than 30 seconds. My first reaction probably should have been to assume that she went to the bathroom or had to leave in a hurry. Instead, I searched the entire house. I went through every single room, convinced I was going to open a closet or look under a bed and see her stuffed in there, grinning at me. That didn't happen, obviously, but I was still extremely on edge as the sun started to go down. I felt like I was turning off the light in my bedroom after spotting a giant spider in there. That night, I propped a chair against my bedroom door because I just couldn't shake the feeling that the woman was still in the house somewhere, hiding. I woke up at around 2 in the morning and heard creaking floorboards downstairs. It was an old house and unfamiliar. I kept telling myself that until the noises stopped. When I woke up the next morning, there was a red sweet on the living room table. I'll tell you the same thing I told the police. No, I couldn't be absolutely certain that the sweet wasn't there the day before. Maybe I had just overlooked it, but I didn't think so. They told me that the organization the woman claimed to come from didn't actually exist, and clearly thought that I was wasting their time. After they left, I searched the entire house again, and the grounds, and then I searched them again. By the time I was finished, I had managed to calm down a bit and looked at the situation rationally. The woman probably left the suite there the previous day, and I just didn't notice. I had searched the whole house twice now. There was nowhere she could possibly be hiding. She was probably just some doddery old lady who wandered off while I was in the kitchen. As I prepared to go to bed, I had managed to fully delude myself into thinking nothing strange was going on. I decided not to do anything childish like blocking my door, because what was I afraid of? Even if she somehow was still inside the house somewhere, what was she going to do? At some point in the middle of the night, I woke up abruptly, knowing in the back of my mind that something was wrong. I guess I must have heard something in my sleep. I turned over onto my side and reached out to turn on the bedside lamp, groping around because I was in an unfamiliar room. When the light came on, I saw the old woman standing right next to my bed. I only got a glimpse of her because as soon as I screamed, she scuttled backward out the door really fast. I only got the briefest glimpse of her before she vanished into the unlit hallway outside my door. I now believe that the human brain has a special compartment for dealing with experiences far outside the realm of the natural. If I had woken up to find a burglar in my room, I probably would have gone numb with panic. If there was a lion at the foot of my bed, I would have been too paralyzed with fear to do anything. But as soon as the woman disappeared, that special compartment took over. I jumped out of bed and slammed the door shut, and then shoved a chair up against the handle. Then I dashed for my phone. No signal, no internet. I later found out there was nothing wrong with the phone or the local service. I think somehow the woman interfered with it. The drop from the bedroom window wasn't too high. If I landed just right, I would probably avoid injury. But what if I sprained an ankle or broke my leg? I had a sudden vision of pulling myself across the dark garden while the woman sprinted after me, and I decided I didn't want to risk it. That gave me two options: wait out the night in my bedroom, or try to get out of the house now. I went for the second one. I was thinking that my flimsy barricade wouldn't hold if the woman decided that she wanted back in. I broke one of the chair legs off and crept slowly into the hallway, reaching carefully for the light switch. When I pressed it, the lights came on for a second and then faded out. I flicked the switch a few more times. Nothing. Some gut instinct told me she was sabotaging them somehow. I used my phone for light as I slowly, quietly crept along the upstairs hallway and down the stairs. The light barely traced the shape of the walls and the dark, yawning frames of open doorways. I jumped at every single shadow and unidentifiable shape, certain that any second the grinning face would appear out of the shadows. I got downstairs into the front door. I had double locked it and put the chain in place. Just as I was reaching for the first lock, I heard rapid, uneven footsteps at the top of the stairs, approaching swiftly. I undid the first lock. A high-pitched shriek came from halfway down the stairs, and I screamed as I undid the second lock and wrenched the door open. It stuck fast. I had forgotten the chain. I glanced behind me and saw the tall, spindly shape of the woman half running, half falling down the stairs toward me, her head lolling backward and her mouth hanging open. I can't even remember getting the chain off. I might actually have just yanked the door open so hard that I broke it. In any case, the last that I saw of the woman was her face inches away from me as I slammed the door shut. I sprinted to the nearest house, and eventually they called the police, possibly because I was half delirious with fear and babbling incoherently. The police once again failed to find anything unusual. It's been a week. I'm staying at a friend's place, sleeping with the lights on and the bedroom door barricaded. The house's real owners aren't back yet. I'm not sure what I'm going to tell them, but I have to stop them from going back there, somehow. This isn't a haunting, it's an infestation. I can't stop thinking about all of the holes in our defenses, the windows and doors left open, the strangers invited into our living room. I just hope to God it's the house that she wanted, and not me.
Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. I release every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, r/LetsReadOfficial, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. And if you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon, and maybe even pick up some Let's Read merch on Spreadshirt. And check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all these stories in big compilations and save huge on data. Located anywhere you listen to podcasts. Links in the description below. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon.